Why are Gen Z moving behind radical figures like Zohran Mamdani on the left wing and Nick Fuentes on the right wing? Why are characters like these capturing the imagination of young people today? In this video, I'm simply here to explain why our generation are moving either to the hard left or the hard right, because as a regular Gen Z guy, I know exactly why this is happening. And if you look at the objective reality that we're living in as young people, it will make sense to you as well. Now, I'm not here to concern troll, I'm not here to clutch my pearls and cry about the youth either becoming too woke or literal Nazis. I don't care about moral outrage. I don't have that kind of time. On my channel, I focus on the issues that Gen Z people care about, and a lot of Gen Z people seem to care about these two political figures. So let's get into why that is. Now, what this Gen Z shift really boils down to is the fact that sensible mainstream institutions, so mainstream media, governments, academia, both on the left wing and the right wing, have sold out young people's futures. Example of this comes from Ben Shapiro, who is of course a traditional conservative establishment and media figure. Recently, he went viral for saying this.
If you're a young person and you can't afford to live here, then maybe you should not live here. I mean, that is a real thing. Yeah, I know that we've now grown up in a society that says that you deserve to live where you grew up, but the reality is that the history of America is almost literally the opposite of that. The history of America is you go to a place where there is opportunity. And if the opportunities are limited here and they're not changing, then you really should try to think about other places where you have better opportunities.
Now, irony is certainly not lost on Mr. Shapiro here, because he regularly advocates for the Israeli government, his favorite government, to go into Gaza and blast women and children to smithereens to build a homeland that he feels entitled to. However, if you're an American student, you've worked hard all your life and you're actually a moral person, then you can go to hell. You don't deserve to live in your own city or even your own country if you can't afford it, according to Ben. Now, if I'm trying to be as charitable as possible to Ben here, which is difficult by the way, I think he's trying to run his traditional own the woke entitled liberals playbook that served him so well for so many years. The problem for Ben is that the majority of young unemployed college graduates today are not woke liberals. Sure, there are Gen Z people who are liberally minded, who do feel entitled to handouts, who are socialists, but there are many, many young people now, today, who are not like this. There is a large majority of unemployed American graduates who are qualified, who are intelligent, who are hardworking, who are precocious, who went to university to try and develop themselves, to try and get into a high-paying position, or at least into an entry-level position that would offer them career development in the future. But this is not happening for young people today. How does Ben possibly reconcile what he said with the fact that the majority of unemployed people in the US today are university graduates? There are more unemployed university graduates than there are the rest of unemployed people in the USA put together. That, Ben Shapiro, is a fact. Now, this is not just an American problem. This is happening all over the Western world. There is nowhere left, Ben Shapiro. There is nowhere that we can go and move to that's affordable. Take, for example, my country, Ireland. I am the type of person that I just described. I am qualified. I am intelligent. I am hardworking. I've worked since I was 16 years old. And there is nowhere left in my country for me to afford to live. I'm massively overqualified for the job that I work. It doesn't pay me enough to afford to rent and save in this country. And really, the last logical step for me is to do what most of my countrymen and women have had to do out of necessity, not because they wanted to, but emigrate. And I don't want to do that, but I'm going to have to. That's what Ben Shapiro just doesn't care about. And on behalf of my American viewers, fuck you, Ben Shapiro. How can you possibly defend Donald Trump, who came out recently and justified importing 600,000 Chinese international students on the basis of America not having enough skilled graduates? You do. They're unemployed. They can't get entry-level positions to develop themselves further because you keep importing international Chinese and Indian students. But you don't care about that. You don't care about young people. You care about what benefits your buddies and your advisors in Silicon Valley. And what benefits them are international students that they don't have to pay as high wages and who won't unionize against them. In doing this, Donald Trump has yet again stabbed his young supporters in the back, and they have had enough. They are turning on him and criticizing him in droves, and rightly so. And in a great irony, Donald Trump no longer has Charlie Kirk, his biggest youth supporter, on campuses to defend him from this criticism. Donald Trump's biggest youth supporter was shot and killed in broad daylight, and in a move of pure boomer ignorance, Trump simply passed comment on this and then immediately went yapping about how he was building a ballroom in the White House. Donald Trump's government does not care about young people. Gen Z people don't care about movement conservatism, but we also don't care about the social justice movement, at least in the same way that the millennials did. What we care about is the fact that the social contract is absolutely broken, and I've made a detailed video explaining why that is and why we care so much about it. But what it boils down to is the fact that nothing is affordable, the entry-level job market has absolutely evaporated, and society all around you is more unsafe as a young person. Nobody speaks about this in mainstream media, and nobody does anything about this in mainstream politics. And as a result, Gen Z have become more and more extreme. We have split into two camps. Gen Z people are either hardcore nationalists or hardcore socialists. If only there was a movement that could combine the two of them, that would really be something, no? Okay, all jokes aside, why socialism? Why are so many Gen Z people attracted to politicians like Zoran Mamdani? I don't think it's because of anything particularly special about Mamdani himself. It certainly helps him that he is a good-looking, relatively charismatic guy who happens to be a minority, because of course that travels very well with democratic types in the USA. Rather, I think his success comes from the fact that the social contract is awful for young people, and Mamdani's socialist policies travel very well in that environment. And whatever you think about him, I think Tucker Carlson spoke very well about this exact point.
If you wake up one morning and you find yourself in a society where 23-year-olds with four-year college degrees and like initiative who aren't smoking weed every day, if they can't make enough to buy a car, much less a home, much less get married, much less have children, then why should you be surprised when half of them say they prefer socialism?
Of course, this makes sense. Most Gen Z people who graduate from university are graduating from a middle-class background. If these people are graduating and largely finding themselves unemployed, they are going from middle class to lower class pretty fast and without many opportunities to actually reverse that trend. And the left can absolutely capitalize on this with all of their language around class consciousness. You can think that's ridiculous, you can think it's stupid, you can think young people are stupid for falling for it, but it still works. And that is what Mamdani has done. In perhaps the most millennial move of all time, he has promised young people in New York tons of free stuff, including transportation, city-owned grocery stores, rent freezes, affordable housing, and a $30 minimum wage target by 2030. These are some of his policies. Now you can think that these are ridiculous. I certainly do. You know, the taxes will rise to pay for all of this free stuff. And what's going to happen is the rich won't tolerate it. They will leave, and the poor people in New York will continue to be dependent. They will continue to live on subsidies. The middle class then will be squeezed from both sides. The burden of paying for all of this free stuff will land on their shoulders. But that's not so important here. What is important is that Mamdani is at least offering something to young people. He has got some kind of appeal. He's got some kind of promise. He's saying, I'm at least going to try and make life better for you. And that's more than what the establishment conservatives and establishment liberals can say. Mamdani is also tapping into a revolutionary element of socialist politics that's always been there. This idea that the man, the institution, has its boot on your neck, and he's going after the typical institutions that left-wingers hate, like ICE, like MAGA, and Fox News. This of course belies the fact that most US institutions are staffed with neoliberal people who agree with Mamdani's politics wholeheartedly. But this again is not the point. He is speaking to young left-wing people and saying, hey, come on, let's rally around this kind of identity. There is a hope for change if you vote for me. Okay, so that then brings us on to the nationalist question. Why are so many young people being animated by the likes of Nick Fuentes? Well, I think, again, Nick identifies that young people today have very little agency and sovereignty over the decisions that are being made in their own country. Nick, on his show, repeatedly campaigns against oligarchy and foreign influence in US politics, particularly from the Israel lobby. And his whole movement is about restoring decision-making power to the hands of the American people. His movement is called America First for that reason. Nick also taps into a large group of people in the USA who are alienated. These are the forgotten men and women of America that Trump mentioned during his first presidential campaign. Now, of course, Trump went on to backstab these people in both of his presidential terms, but Nick takes them seriously. He recognizes that these people have an identity. These people are young, they are Christian, and they are white. And that is the same as the founding stock of the USA. Nick repeatedly points out that the diluting of this identity in America is leading to a lower quality of life across the board for everyone. There is chaos on the streets. The Trump administration is importing tons of foreign nationals on H-1B visas. These people are taking entry-level positions from young Americans. And because of this, the USA is balkanizing. People are separating into their different ethnic groups, as typically happens with mass immigration. As a result, as an American, you find yourself living in a country of strangers where there is low trust and you do not know your neighbor. Communities are being destroyed because of this. That's something that Nick wants to protect. He says America is a great country and we should protect what it actually is. A lot of young people are identifying with that, particularly ones who have been alienated from American society for decades now. Ultimately, the main takeaway from this video is that the social contract for young people is broken, and until somebody on the left wing or the right wing takes this seriously, young people will continue to split into these radical factions and influenced by the gas pedal of the internet. So there it is. That is why Gen Z people are becoming more and more extreme. And this is the point of the video where I ask you for your opinions. Do you agree with what I've said here? Did you find this point of view interesting or compelling? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you did find this video interesting, then please, I'm only a small channel. You can help me out big time by liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing this video around. I try and make videos on this channel speaking about Gen Z issues. And if that's something that you're interested in, I have a community tab. Write down a topic that you would like me to discuss. I will happily do it in the upcoming videos. And if you do all of that good stuff, then I will grant you special privileges to criticize Ireland when it inevitably meddles in your domestic politics. Not the Israelis you should be worried about. It's us.